Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Tommy James. Tommy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to talk with you.
Oh, you say that now, Tommy. We'll see how you feel when this thing's wrapped up. Well, I'll tell you what, you grew up in that rock and roll metropolis of Niles, Michigan.
Right.
And tell me this, I'm going to guess that you came up watching Elvis and Buddy Holly on the Ed Sullivan Show. And did you ever think when you were watching that, you wanted to that's what you wanted to do? Did you think that you'd be on TV doing it just like them?
No, absolutely not. I always hoped I would, but all I wanted to be, as soon as American Bandstand came on and I was watching rock and roll on TV, I just wanted to be one of those rock and roll guys. And the good Lord gave me the desire in my heart, and I'm amazed. Nobody's more amazed than me.
Yeah. Now, what was it like when you did get on Bandstand and you're talking to Dick Clark?
Well, it was magical, of course. I remember doing my first batch of concerts when Hanky Panky was just hitting the charts, my first record. And here I am working with the groups that I was selling their records a year before in the Spin-It record shop in my little hometown of Niles, Michigan. And so it was really almost a spiritual experience. I mean, it was so unbelievable. It was a miracle.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole backstory on Hanky Panky. You guys cover the song, goes nowhere, and then the next thing you know, you're getting that phone call going, "Hey, guess what's happening here?"
That's right. I tell the story. Only in America could this happen. I had recorded Hanky Panky back in '64 with my high school group, the Shondells, and it came out on a little label called Snap Records in my hometown. And it did okay locally, and it was a pretty big hit locally, and we thought it was great. We got on the jukeboxes and stuff, and basically the record died after that because we had no distribution and we couldn't go any further than about 6 or 7 little towns around Niles. So we sort of forgot about the record, and in the following year, 1965, I graduated from high school and I took my band on the road, and we were playing all through the Midwest, playing clubs and bars and stuff like that. Anywhere we could make a few bucks. And right in the middle of my 2 weeks, I'm playing this dumpy little club up in Wisconsin, Janesville, Wisconsin. And right in the middle of my 2 weeks, the government shuts the club owner down for not paying his taxes. So we were sent home and feeling like real losers. But that's how God works, because I got home and immediately got the call that changed my life. The record distributor in Pittsburgh called my house and tracked me down and asked me if I was aware that my record, Hanky Panky, that I had recorded 2 years earlier, was sitting at number 1 in the city of Pittsburgh. And I went, "Who is this?" And he finally convinced me who he was and asked me to come to Pittsburgh. And I went there and did some shows with the original record producer who took me to Pittsburgh. And sure enough, I got there, and outside the city limits, I'm nobody. And as soon as I crossed into Pittsburgh, I'm a rock star. So go figure. And I picked up the first group I could find there playing locally, to be the Shondells because I couldn't put my original band back together, and got a manager and did local TV and radio and the newspapers and everything. And a week later, we're in New York to sell the master of Hanky Panky to a major label. And I don't know if you want me to continue with the story. I'm a little long-winded here, but
yeah, go for it. I mean,
okay.
Hanky Panky's kind of a big song, Tommy.
Yeah, well, basically what happened is we took the record to New York and saw literally all the record companies we could, and we got a yes from everybody. Hanky Panky, of course, had a regional breakout in the trade papers because Pittsburgh was a major market, and so we got a yes from Columbia, from Epic, Atlantic, RCA. Even Kama Sutra. You remember Kama Sutra Records back in the 60s?
Yeah.
So the last place we took the record to was Roulette Records, which is an independent label. It was okay, but I thought when I went to bed that night we were going to be with one of the corporate labels, one of the big outfits. So the next morning, about 10 o'clock, we started getting phone calls from all the other record companies that had said yes the day before, saying, listen, we got a pass. And I said, what do you mean we got a pass? I thought we had a deal. And so Jerry Wexler up at Atlantic told us the truth, that Morris Levy, the head of Roulette Records, had called all of the other labels and scared them to death, backed them down. He even talks like this, you know what I'm saying? So right out of the movies, this guy is. So, we had heard that Roulette was a little mobbed up, but we didn't pay much attention to that stuff, just rumors. And so anyway, all of the other labels said we got a pass, and we were apparently going to be on Roulette. That was the first offer I couldn't refuse. And so we went up to Roulette that afternoon. I did, and met Morris Levy, the head of the label, and oh God, all the people in the office, and we ended up signing contracts with Roulette. But they ended up taking the label or the record to #1 all over the world. Now the reason Roulette was it was very interesting was because in addition to being a pretty good little independent label, Roulette Records was also a front for the Genovese crime family in New York. And so that made life really interesting for us, because while we're Mony Mony and Hanky Panky and all the rest of it, there was this very dark and sinister story going on behind us that we couldn't talk about. Because they were, but that's the theme of our book and a whole other story. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, you've got got your book, Me, the Mob, and the Music, and lots of really good stories. In fact, you mentioned Morris. Mm-hmm. Was he not the basis for the Hesh character in The Sopranos?
Yes, indeed, he was. Absolutely. The Jewish record promoter that, ripped everybody off. He was a lot meaner than Hesh, though, I'll tell you. I met Jerry, I can't think of his last name now, but the fellow who played Hesh, I met him. He came to our studio, and we became friendly and did an interview together. He's a great guy. I can't think of his last name to save my life. Can you?
I get you.
This is terrible. This
3
is
a.m.
terrible.
Sweat, Tommy.
Oh, this is once the plaquing starts. You know what I mean? It just doesn't quit. So at any rate, that's the true story. That Morris was Hesh in The Sopranos. Yeah. So it was a very awkward and scary time.
Yeah. Now, did you watch The Sopranos, and when you first saw it, did you immediately go, "Wow, I lived this"?
Well, yes. I mean, up to a certain point, yes, I did. But I mean, of course, it wasn't,
Right.
that intense. But the bottom line was that Jerry Adler is. Thank you very much. Jerry Adler was his name, and or is his name, and he's a great guy. Anyway, we were very aware of the city, who we were rubbing shoulders with, and as time went on, we'd start recognizing people, that we'd see on TV, we'd see in the news. We'd meet somebody in Morris's office, and a week later, we'd see him on TV, in handcuffs, doing the perp walk out of a warehouse in Jersey somewhere. And we'd say, "Isn't that the guy we just met in Morris's office?" And of course it would be. And that sort of thing kept happening. And gradually we caught on.
Yeah. Well, tell you, getting back to the music, the following year, I Think We're Alone Now. Another monster hit for you.
Mm-hmm.
What was the backstory on that song?
Well, Bo Gentry and Richie Cordell, who wrote the song, came to me. I had become friendly with both of them, and came to me with this sort of mid-tempo ballad called "I Think We're Alone Now." And they played it for me up at Roulette on a piano and just banged it out. And you could hear immediately, as soon as the chorus came in, that "I Think We're Alone Now" is going to be a hit record. There was just no doubt about it. It had that. It was the perfect melody, but I thought it was a little slow. And we went in the studio and did a demo with Bo singing the lead, and that's where we came up with the eighth notes, the doom 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 doom, and it became sort of the signature sound of the record. And we sped it up, and Bo sang lead, and we went back over to Roulette with the demo, played it for Morris, and he flipped out. He loved it, and so I went in and did it, and that was I did the lead vocal. Christmas Eve, 1966, the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and boy, what a present that was.
Yeah, I would think. Now, the following year, 68, Mony Mony.
Yeah, well, Mony Mony was a little different. We began Mony Mony in the studio, just kind of coming up with a little 3-chord rock and roll throwback song. I'd always loved what was called party rock. I always loved songs like Gary U.S. Bonds would do, or Mitch Ryder, those kind of songs that would just put immediately everybody out on the dance floor. And playing in cover bands myself, I appreciated those kind of records. So we tried to create one. And in the studio, we just kept banging around 3 chords until we came up with what we liked. Well, anyway, we worked on it for about 6 weeks, and we wrote the song. It had a lot of sort of silly kind of words to it. And it's the night before I'm supposed to do the lead vocal, and we still have no title. And we're looking, Richie and I are up at my apartment in New York, and we're looking for a girl's name, a kind of a silly, kind of a 2-syllable girl's name, like Sloopy or Mony Mony or one of those kind of names. And so in disgust, we throw our guitars down and walk out on the terrace and light up a cigarette, and kind of got our elbows on the railing, and we're looking out into the night sky in Manhattan. And the first thing our eyes fall on is the Mutual of New York Insurance Company, MONY, with the time and the weather it gives you. And we just start laughing because that was perfect. and that was the perfect title. And you know, it was just like we had been given the title. I've often said if we'd have been looking in the other direction, that thing might have been called Hotel Taft, Equitable, anything. I don't know. We were desperate, but so that became the title. Mony Mony, you know, turned out to be one of our biggest records of all time.
Yeah, well, the if I recall correctly, Mony Mony was huge here, but it was even bigger in the
Yeah,
UK.
right.
And wasn't there a fairly well-known Brit that was working with some folks that wrote some songs for you?
That's right. Uh, George Harrison, um, you know, and a group that he was working with, he was producing a group called Grapefruit. And they sat down, George and a couple of the guys in the group, and wrote about a dozen songs for us that sort of all sounded like Mony Mony. And he brought it over and hand delivered it to our people. And I was out on the road, and I came back, and I couldn't believe it that I'd missed meeting George and didn't get a chance to thank him. But how good of him to do that, and what an honor it was. I'm so sorry I never got a chance to thank him in person. I sort of did through the media, but I never got a chance to shake his hand. And he was the only Beatle I didn't meet, that I never met. And
Ironically.
yes. So at any rate, I still have those tapes somewhere. I never did them because I never did any of the songs, because by the time I got them, we were already into Crimson and Clover and really had a style change. We're very different by that time. And so anyway, that was always one of my great regrets that I never got to thank him.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, as we're talking about, I think we're alone now in Mony Mony. 20 years later, both those songs are chasing each other up the charts. Tiffany's cover of I Think We're Alone Now, Billy Idol, Mony Mony. What was that like when you're sitting there 2 decades later watching your songs at the top again?
Well, it was amazing. My wife Linda and I were traveling to LA, and she had a Billboard magazine with her, and she happens to look and she says, "Oh, look, this is like, I don't know, October of '87." And she says, "Well, look at this." And both records were released the same week on different labels by two very different artists, Billy Idol and Tiffany. And they both then went up the charts like they were holding hands. And each of them went number one back to back. Number one and number two, and then number one and number two for the other, the other way around. And so it was the first time that had ever happened. And I was just amazed by it. That was, two songs by the same artist to get covered and go number one back to back. It's just outrageous. And so I was very thankful for that. We've had over 300 cover versions of our songs done by artists all over the world, just all kinds of artists. I mean, Crimson and Clover was done both by Prince and released it as a single on his number one album, Lotus Flower, and Dolly Parton, who turned it into a country song, and I did a duet with her. And two totally different. You can't get any more different than that. And 300 different artists. I love REM's version of Draggin The Line. The Boston Pops did Mony Mony, believe it or not. It's just an amazing array of people. So I'm very thankful and very honored when another artist does one of our songs, and you get to hear how they interpret the song. I really mean that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, back then when you did Crimson and Clover back in '68, had somebody told you, "Hey, Tommy, that new girl singer with the Dumb Blonde as her first single. 30 years from now, you're going to be in the studio doing a bluegrass version of this song with her. What your response would have been?
Well, that's right. I never in a million years. In fact, this week, as we speak, there's a new version of it out by a group called the Shacks, Shacks, the Shacks. And I had a meeting last week with Sony Music. They're my publishers, and I had a big meeting, and they informed me that this was the #1 stream on TikTok. That this new version of Crimson and Clover by the Shacks, and so I can't believe it. I can't believe that 54 years later, the song is still on the charts and happening like that. It just amazes me, absolutely amazes me.
Well, the irony of it all is the fact that didn't the version that was released wasn't even what you had intended to be the final version?
That's right. Crimson and Clover by Tommy James and the Shondells was a rough mix from a 7.5-inch tape. I never got a chance to remix it. And the reason is when the record came out in a Christmas week of '68. And when it came out, just before it came out, I had a concert in Chicago, and I had a little 7.5-inch tape that was a rough mix that I had the night we recorded it. I just threw it up on the board. It was a work tape. It wasn't even supposed to be heard by anybody except me. So I happened to take it to Chicago, and I went up to WLS, which only happened to be the biggest station in the country at that time, and got with the program director, John Rook, and I said, John, I really would, you got to hear this. We were friends like that. So he played it, and he flipped. He says, oh, that's great. And he brings in Larry Lujak, who was another famous jock in Detroit, in Chicago, and plays it for him. And the second time they play it, they tape my tape. They record my tape. And I didn't know it. So at the end of our conversation, they hand me the tape back, and I go downstairs. I get into the car, and the radio's on. And all of a sudden, I hear on the radio, world exclusive on WLS channel 89. And I hear, oh, and I'm going, what? They're playing this rough tape, this rough mix. And I can't, oh my God, they're going to ruin everything. Well, they started playing it every half hour, and they broke the record. But I couldn't go in and do a mix. We had to release it just the way it was. So, and it ended up being the biggest record we ever had. Did 5.5 million copies right there in 1969, early 69. And, all from a rough mix. But it's just so amazing to me that, this business is so crazy. Mm-hmm. So nutty and in a good way. And anyway, so it's a rough mix. I never got a chance to mix Crimson and Clover.
Did you ever think about going back and doing the mix that you wanted to do?
I would have ruined it. I would have ruined it. I'd have gone in and I'd have added all kinds of echoes and reverbs and all kinds of stuff, and tried to make it more psychedelic than it already was. And I would have screwed it up, no doubt about it. So,
yeah.
Once again, God was good to me. Tom, you're done. You're done mixing. Only he's got a much deeper voice.
Well, so as we're talking about covers, Joan Jett had a huge cover on Crimson and Clover, and
she was went #1 too.
Yeah, so that was produced by Kenny Laguna, who didn't he play keyboards on some tracks?
Kenny was a member of the Shondells for about 2 years. Good friend of mine. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, how did you come to play with Joan at her Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction?
Well, she asked me if I would do Crimson and Clover with her, and so it was great being on stage with Joan. Singing with us was Miley Cyrus and Dave Grohl. So we had 4 generations of rock and rollers doing Crimson and Clover at once, and it was really an amazing moment. It's on YouTube if anybody wants to see it.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, Tommy. All the success you're having, you were pretty young. Yeah, when you were experiencing all that. How did you deal with the trappings of success in the rock and roll lifestyle?
Well, it was like being in the eye of a storm. I mean, eye of a hurricane. Everything was going on at the same time. And we really were very blessed to have the kind of success we did, especially at the label we were at. We ended up with 23 gold singles at Roulette. We had 9 platinum albums, and we did about 110 million records at Roulette. And so, I was pretty burnt out by the 80s, and I was popping pills, and I was drinking too much, and I was misbehaving a whole lot. I ended up going to the Betty Ford Center in '86, and I take it that's what you were referring to, because
I'd read that you had an experience in New York watching the Billy Graham Crusade from Shea Stadium, and you credited that with having a big impact on your life.
Absolutely. I became a Christian, and I was watching Billy Graham on TV at Shea Stadium, and was really hit very profoundly, and I got saved that night. And this is back in 1967, and all I can say is that the problem was I was talking the talk, but I wasn't walking the walk until I went to the Betty Ford Center. Really, that really is the truth. And it was next to the night with Billy Graham. It was probably the most important time of my life for turning things around.
Yeah. Well, you had 2 records where you were channeling, we'll say, your Christianity through it. 2 songs that people didn't understand what you were saying in the lyrics. First, Sweet Cherry Wine.
Sweet Cherry Wine. And of course, to me, Sweet Cherry Wine was almost, it was a religious song, Sweet Cherry Wine, meaning the blood of Christ, and Crystal Blue Persuasion, about becoming a Christian. That's really what it was to me. And, but there was no such thing as political correctness back then. And each single, to me, was sort of a snapshot of where I was at the moment. And so I'm very proud of those records, and proud I could put them out. I don't know if I get any flack for it today or not. Times are very different.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, on the intro to Sweet Cherry Wine, you've got the organ, you've got the chimes. It's got a very church-like feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Intentional?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. And I'm glad that you perceived that. I'm glad that you saw that.
Yeah. Well, say when you hear the song on the whole, you pick up that vibe, and then it's only when you really listen to the lyrics that you pick up the intent, of the song. And I find it interesting that your intent with Crystal Blue Persuasion, because you actually reference a book of the Bible, in the lyrics, correct? Where people thought it was a drug song, but for you, it was not a drug song.
No, very much the opposite. But I'll never. the story with Crystal Blue was that we were doing in 1960, the summer of 69, early summer, maybe spring of 69, we were doing a concert in Atlanta, Georgia at the college. And a kid runs up to me with big, thick glasses on, a really nerdy looking kid. And with a paper in his hand, he says, "Tom, listen, I got this poem. If you could just read, just take it with you. Just take it with you." And of course, as songwriters, you're always on the lookout for a good title. And you never know where it's going to come from. A book of matches, a billboard, you never know where it's going to come from. So I looked at this kid's poem. I took it back to the hotel with me. It was called Crystal Persuasion. And it was about the book of Revelation in the Bible. And chapter, I think it's 19, where it mentions the crystal city. And basically, I just started playing. I thought that was such a neat visual, crystal persuasion. Wasn't sure what it meant, but it sounded very profound. So Mike Vale and Eddie Gray and I sat down with it, and we started messing with it. And we didn't steal his poem. We actually wrote a different song with the same message. And we needed one more syllable for the rhyming scheme that we had. And so we put in the word blue. So it became Crystal Blue Persuasion. And went back, and strangely enough, it became one of the hardest records I ever produced. We completely overproduced it. We had a full set of drums. We had 3 electric guitars. We had a couple of different keyboards. And it was just overdone. We got done and we looked at each other. We said, "That's not the song we wrote, is it?" No, it's not. So we spent the next couple of weeks unproducing the record and pulling stuff out. And all that was left, we pulled out the drums, we pulled out all the guitars. All that was left was conga drum, and bongos, the bass, a little trickling organ, and my tremolo guitar. And that was, and the bass, of course. That was all that was left. And, and the vocal then could breathe, everything. The record could breathe. And we had to let it breathe to be Crystal Persuasion, the song that we wrote. So anyway, it was one of my proudest moments when that record became a hit, because we had worked so hard on it, and it was a message that I wanted to say.
Yeah. Now, was Alive and Kickin' going to...
And Morris loved the record.
Well, I was going to say,
Morris loved the record.
Was Alive and Kickin' going to record it first, and then Morris insisted you keep it for yourself?
I was thinking about it. Alive and Kickin' was a group that I had been friendly with, and they were from Brooklyn, and a really great group that played locally, and they wanted me to produce them, and so I was really busy. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. So after the Shondells and I sort of went our separate ways in 1970, I started thinking about going in the studio and doing this song that I had written called Tighter, Tighter with Bob King, my new production partner. And we went in the studio, and I brought in Jimmy Wisner to do the arranging. We did the flugelhorns and some of the stuff, and the basic track. And then I played guitar on top of it, and I sang it. But I didn't like the way I was singing it. I didn't like the vocal. Something just wasn't right. So I thought about Alive and Kickin', this group that I wanted to produce, and I asked them if they wanted to come down and give it a try. And I rewrote it a little bit as a duet, because they had a female singer and a guy singer. And they came in, and they did it great. Their guitar player played the guitar solo. He was 17 years old, played this amazing guitar solo. Bruce Sedano, who was a member of the group, who later was a member of Brooklyn Dreams, played the organ, and we sort of did them on top of the track that we had done the week before, and they just came out great. And we took it back to Roulette. Morris loved it, put it out, and went #1. And it's the first group I ever produced, other than the Shondells. So it really was a very big deal to me, and so we were very thankful for that record. We do the song in our concert show.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, after that solo hit, Draggin The Line.
Yeah, Draggin The Line.
Tommy.
Well, Draggin The Line was my first top 10 record as a solo artist. And so it was strategically very important for me. It was a song that I wrote with Bob King up at my farm in upstate New York. And we actually did the music track before we wrote the song. We had the track recorded before we wrote the song. We wrote the song around the music track. And we first put out Draggin The Line as the B-side of a record that I put out, a single called Church Street Soul Revival, which was a pretty big record, top 20 record. But radio started playing the other side, Draggin The Line. And that's the first time that had ever happened to me, where radio, we actually got more airplay on the B-side. So I went in, I took it in the studio and put some horns on it and remixed it and reworked it a little bit. And we put it out as a single. And again, went top 5 for us all over the country. And it was an important record for me because it was my first big record, first big hit record of my solo career.
Yeah. And then you wind up getting another hit in your third decade, chart hit in 3 different decades with 3 Times in Love.
Right. That was the first song. This was in 1980. And it was my first hit as an adult contemporary artist. I figured, what the hell? I'm adult and I'm contemporary. Yeah. So anyway, we put it out and went #1 AC, adult contemporary, and top 10 on the pop charts. And it was a very important record. It was very important to have, hits in 3 decades. It was a nice feeling and made a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, Tommy, I know your schedule. You've got to get moving here, but I just want to make sure that people, your the book, Me, the Mob, and the Music is out there.
Thank you. It's going to be a movie.
I was going to say it's pre-production of the movie. I know COVID delayed it, a couple of years.
That's right. And we're on Sirius XM, channel 73, 60s Gold every Sunday from 5 to 8. And we're in our 6th year of doing the radio show. So there's a lot going on. And I'm thankful to be doing it all this time. I've had the same job since I was 14 years old. So that's like being a paper boy your whole life.
Tell me this, Tommy. What do you like more, being on the DJ side of things or on the record maker side of things?
I love them both. Honestly, when they first came to me to do the radio show, I was a little scared because I had never worked that side of the mic before. And so I did the show and I fell in love with it. And to this, I love doing this show because it's such a great way to stay in touch with the fans, especially during COVID when they shut the concert business down. So, and now it's just so great to be able to connect with the fans at this level and with such an incredible audience. The satellite covers all of North America, and now with the app, all of the world. So it's really phenomenal, and I'm very thankful to the folks up at Sirius for letting me do the show, because it really has been very good for me in my career. And as I said, it's such a great way to stay in touch with the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell me this. Yeah, we had to cram a whole lot of stuff into a little bit of time there, but is there anything
good interview. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Is there anything that we didn't get to that you want to make sure that we mentioned?
Well, listen, we're going to be on the road all year, starting this week. And if you'd like to come to our website and check out our concert dates, we may be coming to your town. It's just TommyJames.com. We are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and the website. So we're all over social media, and come check us out and say hello.
All right. Well, we've had your website, your social media scrolling across the bottom of the screen throughout the show, so folks can track you down at, TommyJames.com is pretty easy to remember for Tommy James fans. So it all works.
Thank you, my friend.
No problem. I want to thank everybody for watching. Tommy, thanks for taking the time to join us. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.